Hey, War Pugs. So, we actually checked out the true size of a Krieg siege regiment before. But now we're going to see the true size of a Krieg artillery corps. This is from Invicta, and I was really pleasantly surprised with how they demonstrated the Siege of Rack's 88th siege army the last time. I thought it was really well done, because it helps you get a good visual idea of just how many troops that you're actually seeing. And forgive me, guys, I'm getting my drink ready for this. 1 second. You must give me time to prepare myself for the carnage I'm about to see. But Krieg, as it stands, their regiments are just far larger than normal regiments, mainly because of how much attrition they're going to see throughout the course of any conflict that they're engaged in. It's just going to happen. So we're going to bounce right in here and take a look at Invicta's demonstration here on Krieg artillery corps sizes. Now, keep one thing in mind with this. This is not a stock standard Imperial Guard regiment. Certain regiments within the Astra Militarum, if you're just learning about 40k, certain regiments are going to be larger and smaller depending on what they have in them and what planet they are from. A standard Cadian regiment, which is considered kind of the norm for the galaxy at large, that would be, I'd say anywhere from 70 to 80, well, 60 to 70% of the regiments that you see are going to conform to Cadian standards. 60 to 70% of them. So if you're looking at a regiment of just stock standard line guardsmen, they're going to conform to Cadian standards a good 70% of the time. Krieg is not one of those places that conforms to Cadian standards. Let's get into it. Here we go. The true size of the Krieg Artillery Corps.
Before the whistles are blown, thunder sounds in the deep.
Hooray! Earthshakers!
For hours on end, it will rumble across the land, raining down destruction and tilling the earth with carnage.
In Krieg terms, this is the song of our people.
Even as the troops and the tanks surge across the battlefield,
oh yeah,
death's drums pound relentlessly at the foe.
Oh.
Formations and fortifications crumble under the pressure of a barrage which can endure for years on end. Thus does this grim reaper of the battlefield stand as the deadliest member of Krieg's combined arms forces. Today, let us dive into its inner workings. From the frontline field artillery teams,
oh yeah,
to the heavy artillery batteries, the siege artillery companies, the Leviathan war machines.
That looks like an Ordinatus.
And the endless supply columns which feed these
I'm probably wrong.
Beasts.
I'm most likely wrong. Ordinatuses are a lot bigger, I think.
This is the true size of the Krieg Artillery Corps.
Yeah, I'm definitely wrong about that. I'm stupid wrong about that. Excuse an old man for being senile.
So if you love these types of videos and the world of Warhammer 40,000, I can highly recommend the game Tacticus, which is today's sponsor. Now, I've been playing this game for over a year now. I am super addicted. I play almost daily, and I love it. So essentially what you're going to be doing in this game is making a team of characters to fight tactical, crunchy battles. There are a whole bunch of factions in the game. I've collected most of the characters at this point, and I love it. Each of the different factions...
Be back in a second. All right.
Comes with its special traits. For instance, the Necrons have this living metal feature which allows them to heal at the start of each round. Otherwise, Nurgle, for instance, is very flavorful. They have a contagion ability which strips away and sunders enemy armor.
And the Tau make great nuclear targets.
And then beyond that, once you get into each character, they all are going to have their different stats, abilities, passives, actives, And you put that all together with all these synergies, and it makes for a very dynamic battlefield. The battles themselves are going to see you deploy about 5 characters and then fight the enemies in turn-based movements on a hex-based grid map. Height, line of sight, elevation, terrain that is impassable. It all matters, and it makes for very flavorful and rewarding combat. The game is chock full of different modes, with rotating special events and constant updates to keep things fresh. I can't recommend Tacticus enough, so use my link in the description below to get started, and keep in mind these 5 quick tips for beginners. Enjoy.
Here we go.
The death world of Krieg is best known for its tithes of fanatical troops. However, these are but one element of the formidable army which emerged from the half-millennium of civil war that ravaged their planet. Beneath the radioactive surface grew vast manufacturing complexes dedicated to the production of war machines and munitions. It is these which have helped churn out the armor and artillery units of the Death Corps. As with the rest of the Imperial Guard, such forces are organized into regiments, which can take all manner of forms. Krieg regiments are unique, not just for their enormous size, but also for their privilege of fielding truly combined arms formations.
We talked
Siege regiments.
We talked about that last time we were checking something from Invicta out. The reason being that so many are not allowed to do that.
Numbering upwards of 250,000, such as those found in the Vrax campaign, are testaments to this method of organization. Within them, infantry, armored, and artillery companies are broadly organized as follows. Focusing more closely on the last of these, variations emerge as one begins to differentiate between the field artillery, the standard artillery, the heavy artillery, and the siege artillery.
The fun kind.
For a closer understanding of their form and function, let us now examine them up close.
Let's do it.
We can begin with the field artillery. At the lowest level of the hierarchy is the field artillery team. It features a single wheeled light artillery piece, which will be manned by a crew of 4 gunners and loaders, who are led by a watchmaster with the rank of sergeant. For such field teams, a Centaur utility vehicle is present to tow the equipment and load the troops for rapid deployment. The role of the team will depend on the variant of artillery being used. Many types exist, but we can cover the most common. The siege cannon acts as the rough equivalent to a 105mm gun howitzer. It provides either direct or low-arc indirect fire up to a maximum distance of around 15 kilometers. Shells include high explosives, fragmentation, armor-piercing, melter, inferno, chemical, smoke, and more.
Yeah, most times you're going to go with high
As such,
explosive,
the
though.
siege cannon can engage a range of targets from maximal distances. Where it shines most, however, is its long range to pummel opposing artillery or fortified positions. Another artillery option is the heavy mortar.
Yes.
It provides high arc indirect fire. Though this comes at the cost of reduced range, it greatly increases the impact of its payloads.
Oh, yeah.
For instance, the HE and frag shells of the heavy mortar are far larger than those of the siege cannon, with the added benefit of a high angle of attack which allows for devastating air bursts.
Make them thick.
Against masses of light infantry or vehicles in the open. The great momentum of such ammunition also allows specialized siege shells to bury deep within fortifications before erupting and caving in their foundations. Other shells in common use are the illumination and smoke shells, which can help support infantry operations. And finally, we should mention the quad launcher.
Yeah, this is War
Its
Crimes for the
weaponry
fun time.
consists of a 4-in-1 mortar system.
For when you need that discount double check.
As such, it inherits the shorter range of this weapon class while boosting its rate of fire by having each barrel fire in rapid succession. Thus is the quad launcher able to quickly saturate an area with explosives for maximum damage or suppression.
Hooray.
The downside of this system is that once the shells are released, it takes more time to feed in new rounds. Commanders must account for such trade-offs. Beyond these examples exist other light artillery pieces such as multi-rocket launchers, bombasts, and heavy las cannons.
The bombast is my
Each has their
personal
own
favorite.
niche to fill in the wars of the Astra Militarum. But for now, let us move on.
All right.
At the next level, 4 to 6 field artillery teams are joined into a field artillery battery, with its own 5-man headquarters unit led by a lieutenant for a total headcount of about 25 soldiers. Within a battery, each of the artillery pieces and their crews will typically be identical. This helps facilitate the operation of the unit, which should ideally have equivalent ranges, reload times, and ammunition. The task of coordinating the battery falls to the HQ. Here, the lieutenant's staff includes a forward observer, whose role it is to assess the enemy's location. This information is then passed on to other team members who act as the fire direction center.
The Fire Direction Center. It's almost like Amazon, only instead of getting packages... Well, you are getting packages. Never mind. It's exactly like Amazon. It's Amazon the Militant Wing.
Job will be to compute the bearing and elevation of the artillery batteries to hit the desired target.
Hooray.
They will also specify the ammunition type, the fuse settings, and other special orders. When such details have been locked in, the information will be relayed to the artillery teams for execution. At times, they may be allowed to fire when ready. On other occasions, they are to await the explicit orders of the commanding officer who will issue the instruction to fire through their FDC. In these duties, the battery HQ will be assisted by a specially equipped Centaur. Such vehicles will be loaded with robust observation and communications packages, with additional tools meant to assist with the otherwise laborious task of fire direction calculations.
Hooray.
The Centaur also doubles as an additional transport for personnel, gear, and towed weapons. At the next level, 3 or more field artillery batteries are joined into a field artillery company with a 5-man headquarters unit led by a captain. Bolstering their ranks are attached supply and utility vehicles for a total strength of about 100 troops.
The utility troops then themselves, the main purpose behind, especially the one in the HQ squad, is to tow vehicles out.
Within a company, each of the batteries has the ability to operate independently and can therefore be configured dynamically. This might mean massing all siege cannons for dedicated counter-battery purposes or having a mix of units for more rounded capabilities. In our case, we have chosen to model 1 battery of heavy mortars and 2 batteries of quad cannons, which is often used as close support for trench warfare.
Makes sense.
Yet, while each battery has its own fire direction center for independent target acquisition, the efforts of these batteries will be coordinated by the headquarters unit. Leading this 5-man team is a captain. They are individuals with both the combat and administrative expertise necessary to properly wield such an important pillar of a Krieg combined arms force. Assisting them in these duties will be a staff of specialist NCOs. Among them may be counted a quartermaster, who will be in charge of the logistical aspects of the company.
Basically taking gear off dead people.
For transport, the HQ squad will be assigned the typical complement of a Centaur utility vehicle. However, given the additional burdens of commanding a company, This team will also be assigned a Trojan and, if they are blessed, an Atlas vehicle, each with a roughly 3-man crew. Let us review both in turn.
Go for it.
The Trojan support vehicle is based on the Chimera chassis. As such, it stands roughly 7 meters long, 6 meters wide, and 3 meters tall. However, in contrast to the Chimera, the Trojan has shed much of its frontal armor and weapons systems. In their place exists a large interior hold capable of housing all manner of supplies. Access to these is made easier thanks to a top-facing hatch and a rear-mounted heavy lift crane. Thus can materials be efficiently transferred in and out of the Trojan vehicle. The crane can also be used to assist in other duties such as towing, resupply, and various engineering tasks. In our case, the Trojan attached to the company HQ has been converted into a specialist communications vehicle to facilitate the coordination needs of the command team. The Atlas recovery tank, meanwhile, helps bolster the resilience of its unit. Based on the Lehman Russ chassis, it measures 7 meters long, 5 meters wide, and nearly 4 meters tall. As with the Trojan, the Atlas is also a stripped-down version of its combat counterpart. Here, the Lehman Russ turret has been replaced with a large crane, while its power plant has been upgraded to a supercharged engine. Such modifications allow the Atlas to fulfill its mission of reaching damaged vehicles and dragging them back to safety. Crews are also able to perform battlefield repairs or can salvage vehicles that are otherwise unable to be rescued.
And this is a big thing with Krieg. This is a actual massive part of their culture. In fact, you might have heard me talk about how the quartermaster, they just go out there and they take gear off corpses. On Krieg, they had limited resources. So anything that they had, I got a hair like right here in front of my, there it is. Did I get it? No, I didn't. The wife shed on me. Anyhow, they had to make the best of whatever they had. So if you're a soldier and you die out in the Badlands of Krieg, what they're going to do is they're going to come out, the quartermaster's going to come out there and strip everything off of you that's worth anything that would take more than 2 seconds to prepare. So gas mask, rebreathers, guns, ammo, down to your shoes. They will leave you with barely anything on the field that they can salvage it to give to someone else. And the same with the tanks. So everything that they do here, like, aside from the sheer martial spirit of Krieg, they are the biggest recyclers in the Imperium.
Thus does the Atlas prove vital to the Krieg army's resiliency in the field. Yet more vehicle teams may be attached to an artillery company to support its operations. In our case, we have assumed this entails a supply column consisting of 4 paired sets of Trojans and ammunition trailers, each with a 3-man crew.
Seems
For such a role, the Trojan interiors will largely have remained stripped down so as to maximize the available space of their cargo holds. Adding further to their capacity are the paired ammunition carriers. These are simply tracked or wheeled platforms used for the bulk transport of materials. In a supply column for an artillery company, this will primarily mean hauling hundreds of shells between supply depots and the gun positions. Given the power of the Trojans, multiple such carriers can be linked together for carrying additional ammunition or even entire artillery pieces. With this understanding of a field artillery company in mind, let us now discuss the organization of a standard and heavy artillery company.
Oh yeah, let's do that. Let's do that.
A standard artillery company will be similarly structured to a field artillery company. It boasts 3 to 6 batteries a headquarters team, and an attached supply column for a total crew of around 100 soldiers, led by a captain. Upon closer inspection, some important differences should be noted. At the team level, we see that the artillery piece itself is larger but still towed. As a result, the crew has been boosted to 7 troops, and the paired vehicle is now a Trojan rather than a Centaur.
Right.
In terms of its operation, this unit functions much the same as its field counterpart. However, the nature of heavier artillery equipment means they boast different combat capabilities.
These guns will sing you the song of the Imperium in heavy caliber.
We can get a sense of this by reviewing a few examples. The Earthshaker cannon is a 132mm caliber weapon with a roughly 10-meter long barrel. Firing from horizontal up to 68 degrees of elevation, it has a standard range of around 15 kilometers, with the ability to increase this to an excess of 20 or even 50 kilometers using overcharged rounds. Shells come in a variety of forms, including high explosive, armor-piercing, macro rounds, smoke, and illumination. All are delivered with shocking force.
Yeah, an Earthshaker will light up your life for the illumination round. In other languages, we call that Willy Pete.
Which is
or white phosphorus.
Earthshaker cannon.
Now, that's not true, but that's not true. You know, they don't call illumination rounds white phosphorus rounds or any. Yeah, I'm just saying, load up a white phosphorus. Never mind.
Its name. Infantry caught in its blast radius vanish in an instant, with nothing more than a 15-meter wide crater as their grave. Given its range, firepower, robust design, and mass producibility, the Earthshaker cannon stands as the artillery workhorse of the Imperium.
Oh, I love it.
The Medusa siege gun is an older piece, whose roughly 300mm caliber weapon and 5-meter long barrel trades range and velocity for larger payloads. These include heavy variants of the typical high explosive, armor-piercing, and incendiary rounds.
In other cultures, they call the HE launched out of a Medusa a bomb.
Given their increased size, these have far larger blast zones than any of the prior artillery pieces we have covered, resulting in entire infantry platoons and even vehicles being devastated by the explosive force. However, where the Medusa truly shines is against fortifications. Here, it makes use of high-arching siege shells to burrow down into structures for brutal detonations at their foundations. Bastion breacher shells, meanwhile, are fired directly at targets, penetrating deeply into bunkers or walls before exploding outwards and leaving gaping holes for infantry to charge through.
Yep.
In our example, we have assumed the standard artillery company consists of 1 battery of 3 Medusa siege guns and 2 batteries of 3 Earthshaker cannons. Once more, each of these will have its own fire direction center for
I have way too much fun with heavy artillery.
Target acquisition, while the company HQ coordinates their actions and support elements. Given the greater complexity and importance of a standard artillery company, we see that it often boasts an enlarged team of around 10 members. These are assisted by 2 transport centaurs, 1 Trojan communications vehicle, and 1 Atlas recovery vehicle. As with the field artillery company, there is also an attached supply column, which we can again estimate as containing 4 sets of paired Trojans and ammunition trailers. Altogether, such artillery companies feature prominently in siege armies of the Imperium, and in particular of those of the Krieg. Owing to
And
their
they're
gun
beautiful.
calibers, they are often deployed well to the rear of the front lines. Here, their massed firepower can be used to saturate the battlefield with bombardments, tear down hardpoints, lay down rolling barrages to cover troop advances, establish box barrages to isolate sectors, and provide counter-battery fire. However, both field and standard artillery companies suffer from the fact that they are slow-moving, towed pieces of equipment, which most typically occupy static positions.
Yeah.
More mobile artillery units are available in the form of the heavy artillery companies.
Yeah. Why am I getting so excited about this? I'm having to... Let's go.
Let us now review these forces. As with its sister units, the heavy artillery
There's nothing like
company
an SPG.
consists of about 3 batteries, a headquarters team, and an attached supply column for a total crew of around 80 soldiers led by a captain. The main difference is that now each artillery team mans a self-propelled piece of equipment. For the most part, these consist of mounting the previously mentioned artillery variants onto the chassis of a Chimera APC. The Griffon light artillery tank, for instance, uses the heavy mortar cannon previously seen amongst the field artillery teams. As a secondary weapon, it can also make use of the Chimera's hull-mounted heavy bolter, in addition to other mounted options such as remote-controlled las guns, missile launchers, smoke launchers, and searchlights. Thus
Searchlight is not a las gun, no matter what you may have heard.
equipped, it is able to act as a rapid response, close support unit capable of keeping up with blitzkrieg assaults, blasting apart key points of resistance, and shrugging off most small arms fire as it charges through the breach. The Basilisk is another conversion, which has chosen as its mounted weapon the Earthshaker cannon. It is often reinforced with a forward-mounted gun shield to protect its crew. The Vanaheim pattern enhances this with flank shielding, while the Armageddon pattern pushes this even further by fully enclosing its crew compartment.
Now, I had not seen the Vanaheim, but I have seen the Armageddon actually painted. I love it.
In all cases, the Basilisk is most often positioned just to the rear of evolving front lines. Here, it will be able to lay down devastating support fire and be ready to push forward as the battle lines advance.
Hooray!
Some commanders will even bring the Basilisks to the fore of their assaults, lowering their guns to act as makeshift tanks.
If you shoot something with a Basilisk, it doesn't really matter what that something is unless it's a Titan. It's going away. It's not a problem for much longer.
Another notable Chimera conversion is the Manticore. Unlike its traditional artillery counterpart,
Yeah, this is the only one that I really don't like on a fundamental level because, I mean, it looks cool, everything else like that, but the reload time is too great.
this vehicle type uses a rocket launcher as its primary weapon. 4 firing positions allow for the loading of multiple missile variants. These include high-explosive fragmentation warheads, oxyphosphor incendiary warheads,
Fun times.
air gas warheads,
War crime.
and surface-to-air interceptor missiles.
Hilarious.
But the most common and iconic munition is the Storm Eagle rocket. These are designed for extreme-range bombardment,
Yeah.
detonating over target zones to unleash a cloud of bomblets which carpet the area with pulverizing force.
Yay.
The notable advantage of the Manticore over its brethren is the extended range and tracking capabilities of missiles, in addition to broader tactical flexibility of being able to use diverse payloads for countering any number of ground and air targets. However, a downside of the system is its ancient design, which is prone to technological eccentricities and long reload times.
In other words, it breaks down a lot. That's pretty much what he's saying.
Larger, self-propelled artillery vehicles also exist based on other vehicle bases. The Bombard, for instance, is built upon a reinforced Lehman-Russ chassis, which allows it to bear the weight of a heavy siege mortar.
God, that thing's sexy.
This massive weapon is among the largest and most powerful of its class, often being reserved for use in dedicated siege artillery companies. Owing to the huge shells fired by this behemoth, the vehicle comes with a recoil spade to hold itself in position, as well as a rear-mounted crane for assisted reloading. Such a massive vehicle is quite slow-moving and thus is most often deployed for sustained bombardments.
Yeah, but at the same time, if whatever you hit is going away, that's the big part. So it only makes sense to, like, I understand why you'd want fixed artillery, but something like this, it doesn't matter where you hit on a battlefield, you're just hitting the battlefield with this thing. There is not going to be much of anything left
Against enemy fortifications or other static targets.
Yeah.
Heavy artillery batteries will typically be formed out of uniform sets of these self-propelled vehicles. Most often, operating in groups of 3, the lead vehicle and its crew will take on the role of the unit's fire direction center, while another crew may be delegated for forward observation. Additional vehicles, such as sentinels, may accompany a battery to assist in observation and even ammunition loading. Together, multiple batteries join to form a heavy artillery company.
A heavy artillery company is the last thing you'd want to be facing down if you're anybody. But it is the one thing I want to use against the Tau. And I want to bring barbecue sauce with me when I do it.
Based on the nature of the equipment being used, a unit with sufficiently large guns and properly scaled supply columns can be designated as a siege artillery company. In either case, the firepower they can bring to bear proves to be one of the Krieg army's deadliest assets. This is especially true when such units are massed into siege armies, featuring hundreds of artillery pieces. The resulting carnage is enough to reshape battlefields, both figuratively and literally.
Yep.
But
This is how you do high-grade industrial landscaping.
even sometimes this is not enough. Even more colossal artillery weapons lurk deep in the recesses of the Krieg arsenal. Many are so large that they require rail-mounted structures for deployment in the field. These guns can fire over hundreds of kilometers and deliver truly massive payloads.
Yep. Yep.
The Ordinatus class war machine is an even rarer find in the 41st millennium. Such leviathans use the equivalent of 4 to 6 Bane blade size chassis to mount truly gargantuan weaponry.
An Ordinatus is an Ordinatus weapon is, quite simply put, starship-grade weaponry mounted on these hulls. Okay? That is what an Ordinatus is. In fact, an Ordinatus one-shot one of the largest Gargants ever built, which is the Godbreaker, which took down an Imperator-class Titan. The Ordinatus took one shot and destroyed the thing.
This includes the feared macro cannon, normally found aboard spacecraft, whose detonations have a radius of 5 kilometers, as well as massive sonic disruptors, gigantic Hellfire missiles, and dedicated Titan killers. As secondary armaments, they may sport quad las cannons, Vulcan megabolters, void shields, and even troop holds for entire regiments. Yet such colossal weapons, while impressive, represent a mere drop in the bucket of the Krieg arsenal. As is characteristic of their armed forces, the Krieg make quantity of force of their own by churning out endless tides of munitions and the field, heavy, and siege artillery companies we have covered thus far. In this way do they pound the enemy into oblivion. A striking example of this method of war can be found in the Siege of Burundi. Here, Krieg regiments were deployed to punish the capital of a rebellious hive world.
I don't know if I'm remembering this exact battle, if I'm remembering this one entirely, but if I am, okay, shutting up, moving on, go.
5 years of relentless bombardment, they rained hell upon the city, obliterating all who attempted to escape.
Oh.
When surrender finally came, the Death Corps ignored it.
Yeah.
Without pause, they continued to level the city. After 3 years, scouts reported the capital was devoid of life. The shelling went on for another 2 years, just to be sure.
Yeah. Krieg doesn't mess around with traitors. Krieg does not mess around with traitors at all. So, they destroyed the Hive City and then atomized the remains until they rotted.
Join us next time as we continue this journey through the true size of the Krieg army.
God.
What topics should we cover next?
So, I can hear the ducks. The ducks are mad. Yep, the ducks are getting moved to the bathtub. Krieg, in and of itself, it goes without saying why there's so many people's favorite army to run. And so many people's favorite, I guess you could call it a sub-faction within a faction. The Cult of Sacrifice is huge. The aesthetics are just downright glorious. But when you really start looking at the kind of power projection you're talking about, you cannot beat the bombard. Give me an army of those, and I don't care. I just don't care. Does it make sense to have an army of bombards? No. Will I make it make sense? Yes. Because it doesn't matter what the bombard hits, the second that it fires, something is going to have a bad day. And it doesn't matter if it's the enemy troops or a Tau City. I actually don't mind either way, either myself. Warpugs, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. This is a pretty cool, this is just a cool series. This is just an absolutely cool series. Invicta has done great work with this. Go subscribe to Invicta. Subscribe to me if you haven't already. Join as a member of Patreon for early access, and I'll catch you guys next time. I want to Ordinanus so bad. I want to point it at a Tau City.